The world ended not with a bang, but with silence. Cities once filled with noise and life became empty ruins. The sky turned dark, and the ocean stood still as if even nature had accepted its fate. Humanity had always believed it was the most powerful species on Earth, the rulers of the planet, the masters of their own destiny. But they were wrong, terribly wrong, because one day, without warning, they arrived. Massive ships covering the sky like shadows, blocking the sun. Their presence alone was enough to break the spirit of the entire world. There were no explosions, no wars, no resistance that lasted long enough to matter. Within days, everything was over, governments collapsed, armies vanished, and humanity was captured. Not killed, not destroyed, but taken, transported, collected like objects, like animals, like something far beneath the beings who had conquered them. The survivors were placed into massive facilities, structures beyond human understanding, filled with advanced technology and glowing lights that never turned off. Inside these places, humans were kept in transparent enclosures, glass cages where they could be observed at all times, watched, studied, analyzed, their every movement recorded, their behavior examined, their emotions measured. They were no longer people, they were subjects, specimens, pets. The aliens who controlled these facilities were unlike anything humanity had ever imagined. Tall, emotionless, their faces unreadable, their eyes glowing with a cold intelligence that made it clear they saw humans as nothing more than lesser beings, creatures of curiosity rather than equals. They didn't communicate in words, they didn't show anger or kindness, they simply observed, adjusted, experimented. Each human was assigned a specific enclosure. Some were placed alone, others grouped together, not for comfort but for observation, to see how they interacted, how they reacted under pressure, under fear, under isolation. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and slowly humanity began to lose itself. Hope faded, resistance disappeared. People stopped remembering what freedom felt like. They adapted. Not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice, because survival demanded it. But not everyone accepted this fate. Not everyone gave up. Among them was a man named Ryan. He was not special, not stronger or smarter than others, but he had something most had lost: anger. A burning refusal to accept that this was the end, that humanity's story would end in cages, being watched like animals. He spent his days observing the observers, studying the aliens, their patterns, their movements, their routines. He noticed things others didn't: small details, slight changes in behavior, moments where their attention shifted, where their control wasn't absolute, and he realized something important, something dangerous. The aliens were powerful, but they were not perfect. They made mistakes, small ones, but enough for someone determined enough to take advantage. Ryan began to plan, not just for escape, but for something bigger, something impossible. He wanted to fight back, to remind the aliens that humans were not just animals, that they were capable of more, that they were not meant to be owned. He started small, testing the limits of his enclosure, learning how the barriers worked, how the systems responded, how far he could go without triggering alarms. It was slow, careful, every move calculated, every risk measured, because one mistake could cost him everything. And then, one day, he found it, a flaw, a brief moment where the barrier flickered, where the system reset for just a second. It was barely noticeable, something no one else would have seen. But for Ryan, it was everything. It was hope, real hope. For the first time since the world ended, he waited, preparing himself, knowing that he might not get another chance. And when the moment came again, he moved, fast, precise, pushing through the barrier before it could fully react. Alarms didn't go off. The system didn't stop him. He was out, free, standing outside the cage for the first time in months, his heart racing, his mind focused. This was it, the moment that could change everything. He moved through the facility, avoiding detection, staying in the shadows, watching the aliens as they moved, as they worked, as they continued their observations, unaware that one of their pets had escaped. As he explored further, he discovered something that changed everything he thought he knew. The humans were not just being kept as pets. They were being prepared, modified, studied for a purpose far greater than simple observation. The aliens were testing them, pushing their limits, altering their biology, trying to understand something deeper, something hidden within human DNA, something even humans didn't fully understand themselves. Ryan realized this wasn't just captivity, this was an experiment, one that could have consequences far beyond Earth, far beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. And in that moment, his goal changed. It was no longer just about escaping, it was about stopping them, about exposing the truth, about fighting back not just for himself, but for everyone, for humanity itself. He returned to the cages, to the others, and slowly, carefully, he began to spread the truth, to show them what he had seen, to remind them of who they were. Not pets, not subjects, but humans, beings capable of resistance, of rebellion. At first, they were afraid, broken by months of captivity. But slowly, something began to change, a spark, a memory of what it meant to be free, to fight, to exist beyond a cage. And that spark grew, turning into something powerful, something dangerous, a rebellion, quiet at first, hidden, but growing stronger with each passing day. They coordinated, planned, waited for the right moment, the moment when the aliens would be least prepared, when their control would weaken just enough, and then the moment came, systems glitched, barriers flickered just like before. But this time, it wasn't just one human moving, it was many. Cages opened, people stepped out, not as prisoners but as fighters, as something the aliens had never expected, resistance. Chaos spread through the facility, alarms triggered, lights flashed, aliens reacted, but it was too late. The humans were no longer controlled, no longer silent. They fought back, not with advanced technology, not with superior strength, but with something the aliens had underestimated: will, determination, the refusal to be owned. And in the middle of it all, Ryan stood, not as a leader, not as a hero, but as proof that even in the darkest situations, even when everything seems lost, one decision, one act of defiance, can change everything. The rebellion spread, not just in one facility, but across others. As the system weakened, as control broke down, humanity began to rise again, not as rulers of Earth, but as something stronger, something that had faced extinction and refused to disappear. And as the chaos continued, as the battle between captors and captives reached its peak, one final truth was revealed. The aliens had never seen humans as equals, but they had underestimated them, and that mistake would cost them everything.